Do you know that feeling when you spend hours building a factory, but you feel like it could be better, more efficient, or more optimized? Well, that is exactly how I felt. And since I'm all about optimizing, I'm going to completely rebuild this factory to be perfect. I considered just deleting my factory and doing it that way, but completely starting over might actually be faster, because actually deleting everything causes your inventory to fill up and stuff like that. You don't want to really lose out on all the things that you already built, so you do want to make sure you keep all your buildings and stuff like that. And all in all, it would just take me way too much time. And actually starting over gives me a chance to see how much I've learned along the way as well. Now don't worry, I'm playing on the exact same seed as before, and I'm actually not going to show you every single step along the way once over again, because, well, you kind of know the drill by now. But I am going to show you all the things that I did differently this time around. For example, this time around I actually started building my miners on top of the actual grid, so I have a little bit more room to place more of them if I want to. The second thing I've done is actually take note of the height that you can see in the top left corner of the screen. That's the 135 right now, because this is the level I want to have my entire factory on, at least for the beginning of the game. So, because I know that I need to be at the height of 135, I also know that when I go over to the other area where the other mining nodes is, I drop down a little bit, so I need to move up a little bit if I want to have all the miners on the same level. Which looks something like this, just a couple of blocks up, because now if I am actually staying on top of this platform, as you can see, I'm at a level of 135 again. So that means that if I connect these platforms up, everything will be exactly nice and flat. Ta-da! Look at how nice and clean this all is now. Now, I completely automated everything with a full belt of ore of both types. I made sure I have enough power to power all of that. And of course, I need tons and tons of plates, because honestly, that's the main bottleneck in the entire early and mid game. Which means as soon as I have my first few technologies completed, just handcrafting the blue science, I actually put up a storage unit, but I'm going to do that slightly different this time around. As you can see, there's only an input for this storage unit over here, but I did limit the amount of stuff that you can put into a storage a little bit. Well, not a little bit, by 3/4 actually. That is because I do want to have a little bit of this on hand all the time, but I don't necessarily want to wait for this entire storage to fill up. So this way, after about a couple of minutes, this will be completely filled up with the 200 or 2x200 plates. And then it will just move everything onto the belt over here. Now this belt is actually going to be producing some machinery parts, and I've done the same thing over here with the storage unit for the rods. Now of course the machinery parts, as you can see, are actually a lot farther away, because this time around I'm trying to think a little bit bigger. I want to make sure there's plenty of room in my factory. That means I'm going to be building a lot of foundations, of course, but all in all, in the long run, I do think that's actually going to be paying off. So here you can see my plan in action, and because I'm leaving so much space in between the different builds, that actually makes it a lot easier to, first of all, get around and know what I'm producing where, because honestly it's not that hard to remember if it's all distinct parts of my factory. And on top of that, it actually makes it a lot easier to expand this production later on if that's what I want to do. Now, like I said before, I'm producing some machinery parts over here. Again, these are being put in a box. I don't need that many machinery parts, so I just have a single slot in my storage for that. But again, it's really nice to have a little bit of everything on hand whenever you need to make some buildings. I actually connected the machinery parts, or the machine parts. Is it machinery or machine parts? Let me look this up now. Machinery parts, it is machinery. Anyway, rods and machinery parts make blue signs, so I now have that automated, and that means I can put up some temporary science facilities. And I say temporary because every time you get to a new level of science, you do need to combine those into the same facilities in order for those to be processed. So the facilities for science are definitely going to be moving around depending on where I am in my progress. For now though, I'll just keep it close, so a couple of science facilities over here processing the blue signs that I now have in mass production, and a little bit of a buffer box just in case I actually forget to set my science to do anything, just so the production of the science is not going to go to waste. Of course, it's not going to be very efficient if I keep everything on the same level, because the miners will actually need to travel a long way down if I do that. So just to make sure that I have a little bit of an efficient production, I made sure to actually put the ignium miners again on top of the ignium, just so they have an easy time to reach that. I can still put a lot more miners over here, although it's a pretty tiny deposit. And I'm just going to bring the belt up, and I actually kind of like how this elevator belt looks. Only the initial part is actually the triangle thing, and then it just goes up like that. It looks really sleek. Usually you have these weird looking triangles that you then need to stack and have support for and stuff like that. But no, in this game they actually look really nice. Of course, that ignium is going to go towards power production once again, and these are the burner generators to do exactly that. Now again, I don't really need that many of them, but I just build a couple of them extra just to make sure I don't run out of power anytime soon. Each of these can actually produce 1.8 megawatts, and I'm only producing about 2.2 at the moment, or I'm consuming 2.2. So this is way more than I need, but I did actually make sure that I build them into the direction of the water, because of course I'm going to be switching to steam power pretty soon, and that means I need to have that ignium moving towards the water anyway for the boilers, so might as well take that into account while I'm at it. With all that power at my disposal, it's now time to start scaling up, so I doubled the amount of smelters that I have making plates. Now, I also added in a fourth miner just to make sure that these belts are always full, and I'm still working with these mining slits that I showed in some of the previous episodes. So, all in all, looking very clean, very efficient, and look at this, I actually also started using balancers. Now, right now this is not really doing much because it's just taking in 2 belts and spitting out 2 belts as well, but this will allow me to rebalance the production between 2 different belts if I need to. Now, for those of you who are keeping track, I now have 8 miners making the xenoferrite. I have a total of 16 smelters making plates. Then I have 4 assemblers making the machinery parts, assuming of course I actually hook this up, because otherwise it's not going to do very much. There we go. And then I have 8 smelters making the rods, and then over here I have 4 of these making the blue science, and then last but not least I now have another assembler over here combining the rods and plates I have into the building blocks, along with 2 assemblers over here making the Mark 1 belts. Now, the balancers are actually vital here as well to actually sort out all of these items, because as you can see, it's now making splitting these plates between the 2 different belts, as well as over here I have this one splitting the rods between 2 different belts as well. And as you can see, this particular belt is not actually in high demand, so that means that any remaining resources go on the secondary belt into my science production, and it's just rebalancing that depending on where stuff needs to go. That just means I need a lot less belts all over the place. I just need to make sure I have enough production on this first belt coming in, and then the rest will take care of itself. With all of that in production now, all I need to do is hook up another 4 assemblers to make some red science. That is going to actually produce 8 red science per minute, along with the same 8 red blue science per minute that I was already producing. And then I only need to hook that up to a whole bunch of these nice little production facilities, and that's going to actually go through my research not super fast, but fast enough for me not to be too bothered by it. Thanks to this very open and clean setup, and it's actually a lot faster to progress through the game as well. And every time I run out of some building or whatever, I just go and grab some more of these plates or whatever I need from the storage units. I handcraft a couple of things. As you can see, I have a lot of things queued up right now. All in all, it's making the progress through the game a lot quicker, and it's a lot easier to keep track of where everything is as well. Now, I added in another 4 miners over here and a secondary mining slit, as you can see, and this belt is going to go towards here, where I also put a secondary line of production for my ignium ore, and all of that is going to go once again to 2 crushers, which are then tied up to 4 smelters making steel. And that's pretty much all we've done in the previous 2 episodes combined, and it only took me like a couple of hours to recreate everything, which is a lot faster than it took me the first time around. Something I didn't actually do last time around, but I do want to start doing right out of the gate now, is put up a assembler making piping. Now, the reason for that is that the steel by itself is actually not going to do much good, although you do need it for several other buildings as well. So I am still stocking up a little bit on steel here. As you can see, just a couple of stacks will do just fine. But the rest of the steel is going to go into piping, because that is actually used for the next type of science as well. Another thing that I'm going to go and do way earlier this time around is actually make use of the ore refinement. This allows you to transfer the rubble into actual refined ore, which makes sure that you can actually make the rods and plates a lot more efficiently. So it's a 50% upgrade in terms of your efficiency. So all you need to do in order to make use of that is just add a couple of these crushers. And as you can see, I have 4 crushers for every line of miners I currently have. And that is just processing the ore and then putting it right back on the belt where it was initially going, and going straight into the smelters, as you can see. Now, because I left myself a lot of building room, I don't need to fuss around or make this very complicated. I can just put those crushers in and leave the rest of the factory as it was without having to basically get myself into a bind. Now, as you can see, the extra production is not actually going anywhere because I currently only have Mark 1 belts. But this does mean that as soon as I start upgrading my facility with, well, higher tier belts, for example, I can actually make use of all of this production as well. And for now, it's just going to make sure I don't draw unnecessary resources from my deposits. Now, to fully catch up where we left off last time around, I needed to build some steam power. And when I say some steam power, I might have gone a little bit overboard. I actually made 10 of these boilers, and as you can see, I just hooked it up to the already existing line of ignium that I used for my power before. All of this is going to go into 10 different boilers over here, and then on this side I only have one single pipe going up, because apparently you can actually fuel a huge amount of these boilers just with a single pipeline. And this is going to go into the boilers over here, and then it's going to go out. The steam that it's producing is going to go out over here. As you can see, it's the same process repeated all over. It looks kind of nice if you ask me. I put up some lights as well just to lighten up the mood, and just to make sure I can get around easily, I had the pipe go up, so we have a little doorway over here. Now, of course, all of that is going to go into these generators that I still have to hook up to power, but all of that is actually being connected to a grid over here. Now, I have 10 different steam turbines, which are actually going to be producing a massive amount of energy, because remember, each of these steam turbines actually produces, well, could produce 3.6 megawatts. So that's 36 megawatts of power, which means basically I need a total of 8 of these transformers to connect it all to the grid so I can actually use it. Now, I don't know about you, but I actually like this factory so much better than the previous version, even though we kind of left off at the same point now as I did in the previous episode. So I'm still producing almost the exact same amount of stuff, but it's just organized in such a better fashion, and with the storage units now always having a little bit of everything that I need for whatever I need to produce in terms of buildings. I am actually slightly producing more materials than I did last time around. I now have 16 smelters making the plates. I have 4 of these assemblers making the machinery parts. I have 4 of each type of science in production. I have 2 assemblers making both the Mark 1 belts as well as the building blocks. I have 8 smelters making the rods, and then in the back I have 4 smelters making the steel. All the other things you're seeing are just power buildings, but honestly, I have so much power now, I'm not going to have to worry about that for a very, very long time, hopefully. Anyway, I hope you kind of like this intermission episode. It was just kind of a rebuild of what we've already done. I tried to go through it pretty fast in order not to kind of just repeat the same things over and over. But hopefully this gives you a kind of an idea of what I've done differently this time around. And then of course next time we are going to be progressing to green science. Honestly, I can really recommend a rebuild like this because it didn't take me anywhere close as much time as I thought it would, and honestly it was probably quicker to just start over than to do a complete delete of my factory and then completely rebuild it from the get-go. So just something to keep in mind if you ever want to do something like that yourself. Anyway, if you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.